We were the first commercial bank to set up a physical refugee branch in a settlement in Uganda. Anyone who's going to come into access to finance, we need to break the cycles of over-dependency on aid, but also try to help them build resilience and livelihood.
This is Financial Inclusion Unlocked, an SIJ production.
Welcome to the Financial Inclusion Unlocked show hosted by me, Jack Farron. This is the podcast meeting sector leaders and innovators across the globe to discuss how we can unlock the potential of financial inclusion as an enabler for the SDGs. This is a podcast that is produced by SIJ Media, and our first series is supported by the Swiss Capacity Building Facility. Uganda is the largest refugee hosting country in Africa, and for those arriving in the country, accessing basic financial services has been incredibly difficult. In this episode, I meet with two local experts, Amos Bonner at Opportunity Bank Uganda Limited, where I learned about how the bank is breaking new ground after becoming the first commercial bank to open a branch inside Uganda's refugee settlements just a few years ago. But first, I spoke to Noah Sempija, country lead for the Refugee Financial Inclusion Programme at Opportunity International UK. I asked him to set the scene for me.
Uganda hosts over 1.6 million refugees, and it's one of the biggest refugee hosting countries in Africa. These refugees come from a number of the neighboring countries. These include the Democratic Republic of Congo. Some refugees come from South Sudan, and we have refugees coming from Burundi, and some come from Rwanda. Of course, these refugees flee a number of internal conflicts and within their home countries. I know you've been following events that are happening in the Democratic Republic of Congo. So many refugees are fleeing civil wars in the country, as well as some refugees actually move because of climate change effects. So when they get to Uganda, they are hosted in a number of refugee settlements. There are 14 refugee settlements, and some refugees are also hosted within the urban centers in Uganda, in Kampala, and some big cities around the country.
If we look a bit further now into financial inclusion and providing adequate, affordable, and accessible financial products and services for refugee populations in the country, what are some of the key challenges that individuals face?
The goal for the country as Uganda is to making sure that refugees are self-reliant, and so the country has opened a number of opportunities for refugees to be able to, tap into and be able to improve their livelihoods. And one of these is access to financial services. But refugees in Uganda are actually faced with, a number of challenges as regards access to financial services, and these really affect their ability to access, the form of financial services. One of these challenges is, access to legal identity and documentation. For example, the identification documents like IDs that are key for the form of financial service providers to help refugees access these financial services. Now, over time, we've learned that a few refugees that have refugee IDs, but even those that have the IDs, they can't actually be verifiable, So the bank is not able to verify that, this ID belongs to refugee X for them to have that confidence to deliver financial services to them. So that's one big challenge. Then the other big challenge that refugees in Uganda face is language barrier. Like I mentioned earlier, refugees come from a number of different neighboring countries, and so these do speak a number of languages from their countries. For example, in Uganda, we have refugees that speak Swahili, we have refugees that speak French, we have refugees that speak Kinyarwanda, others speak Lingala, others speak, Kinyarwanda, and so, but the language that is widely spoken in Uganda is basically English, and so these really struggle to go to banks and speak and access the financial services, but also interpreting simple messages that are normally aired out by the financial service providers. So it makes it hard for them to access these services. Then the other challenge that refugees face is lack of collateral. for them to access loans. You know that a formal financial service provider will require any individual that wants to access a loan to issue or to provide sort of collateral for them to access the loans. But refugees in Uganda actually not having access to this. First of all, they don't own the land, While the government provides them with small parcels of land on which they do their farming, this remains government land. It's not registered in their names, and so they cannot access, they can't use it as part of collateral. But also there are a few refugees who have, accumulated some bit of asset, and the law is still silent on whether the asset for refugees like vehicles or, some bit of businesses, whether they can use it as collateral is still silent. So refugees end up, having issues accessing loans because they do lack the collateral. So the last challenge is around, the inadequate financial products and banking infrastructure within the refugee settlements. Most of the refugee settlements we have in Uganda are actually located in rural, hard to reach areas. For example, you'd find one biggest refugee settlement we have is in West Nile, close to 700 kilometers away from the city, really deep in the village with limited access to electricity and other services. And so financial service providers have not actually taken a step ahead to go and set up branches in these areas. And this limits refugees' ability to access these financial services, but also in addition to their ability, mobility, their ability to be able to move from a settlement to another. So they are kind of confined in a settlement, and these infrastructures are not there and the services are not provided. So they find it hard to access the financial services. But also, them being rural areas, you'd find that even the connectivity is poor. Even when a bank wants to use like mobile banking services or a network of agents, we've found out that they have always found it hard to, access the services because of connectivity and the location of these settlements.
We're about to hear from Amos at Opportunity Bank Uganda, but first a quick shout out for our series sponsor, SCBF. In Jordan, SCBF partnered with Micro Fund for Women to support the financial inclusion of refugee populations, especially women. SCBF's assistance enabled a feasibility study revealing a significant market of low-income refugee women and also highlighted opportunities among other foreign-born residents. These insights led to the creation of a group loan product for Syrians, later expanded to individual business, startup and educational loans for Syrians and other foreign-born residents. SCBF also supported the development of training materials on gender awareness, financial literacy and small business planning for the staff and clients. By the end of the project in early 2018, around 4,000 women refugees had benefited from these financial products, which grew to around 19,000 by 2020. SCBF support helped to empower refugee women and foster their financial inclusion. Let's get back to the show for our interview with Amos Bonner from Opportunity Bank.
Amos Bonner is the Chief Relationship Officer at Opportunity Bank Uganda. Sitting in a studio in Kampala, the nation's capital, I dialed in to chat with him about why the bank started this journey to support refugee populations.
Thank you, Jack. Opportunity has been around for 30 years. We've been dealing with marginalized communities involving women, youth, refugees, persons with disabilities. But in 2019, we noticed there's been an influx in the refugees, over 1.7 million refugees coming in the country, yet there was a very big gap of financial inclusion and financial access for this group. So we decided to deliberately get a strategy of including these 1.7 million cut across the nation as one, because its mission of rural inclusion, but secondly, to help the households get livelihood and improving income.
How did it look from the start? So you mentioned 2019 was the date that this started. So where exactly did you start in the country, and what were those first steps that you took?
Thank you, Jack. So the first steps is we went to the settlement, developed. The first thing was to develop financial products that are going to appeal to the market niche that we had discovered. And so we putting the refugees at the center of our product development process, we used a human-centered design approach. Now, we went through journey mapping, financial diaries, getting products and the problem statement of the refugees, and then we designed both savings and loan products that were appealing to the market niche that we're going to address. Now, initially, remember, for a refugee to access financing in a formal institution in Uganda, there are regulatory, legal, cultural dynamics that are going to happen. So we had to embed a product that is going to break the cycles and have non-conventional ways of accessing financing to such people.
Amazing. And from that day to the present day here in 2025, what does that journey look like in terms of growth and expansion for the services that you've been able to offer?
Thank you. So in 2019, then we had a branch in Mbarara. We used it as a pilot to go to Nachi Valley, which has close to 100,000 refugees. Then in 2021, 2 years after the business case had been proved that it was worthwhile, we set up a brick and mortar branch in the refugee settlement, being the first commercial bank refugee branch in a refugee settlement. 2 years after, because that branch broke even within the first year of opening, we then, using the same methodology, approached it differently into the urban area. So we set up a refugee program in Kampala metropolitan area, where we now serve both refugees in the rural areas and refugees in the urban areas. And where I see we are setting up the second branch in Midwest, that's Kamwenge. And from the strategic plan, we want to set up about 5 branches. And our ultimate objective is in the next 3 years, we should have branches up to Bidibidi, which is the largest. And we believe that, for us, resonates with the mission of rural inclusion, but secondly, giving access to finance at the household level.
And Amos, when you talk about designing these products, talk to me about the steps that you need to take in terms of customizing and making those direct steps to ensure that they cater to the unique needs of refugee populations.
Thank you very much, Jack. The first step is we need to help the refugees get out of aid dependency and make them resilient, independent, and improve livelihood. So the first step was train them how to save, because the money you save today will save you tomorrow. So we developed savings products that are high interest earning, but at the same time, there are no ledger fees, so that there's a motivation for them to continue saving. If they put $1,000 equivalent, they must never get something less than $1,000. That's one. Then 2, we also specifically developed loan products, and using 3 main ingredients that are non-conventional. 1, the pricing was concessionary, so the interest rate was lower than the market rate for inclusion. 2, collateral requirements. In Uganda, it's very hard to get unsecured financing from formal institutions, but with our so many interventions locally and through partners, we were able to access to give credit to refugees even if they had no formal collateral. Then number 3, the methodology itself. And that meant for the starters, who we call the nursery, we start with the group dynamics. So they borrow through group lending. And as they keep graduating financially and growing the capital base, then they can now start getting financing individually, or they can set up circles and village saving and loan association. That is the most unique value proposition that can help any institution out there to access and give a credit plus saving products to the refugees.
You just talked there a little bit about, supporting the communities to save, right? And also village saving groups. How do you leverage the village saving group model to deliver the financial products and services?
To answer, I'll start with the financial inclusion officers have 2 sets of trainings that we do dispense. There's financial literacy and business skills training. Now, in village savings, because these are social groups that are going to bring together people that are like-minded, with almost the same cultural background, same beliefs, it then becomes an easy access point for persons who have been excluded financially. So the village savings, in our opinion, is creating the banks for the future, but at a rural level. So a product that is designed at the VSLA level can allow the village saving to come and access financing to the bank as one loan, and then on lend it to its members. And that means you have traditional group lending, that's the trust group model, or the village saving loan association lending methodology. For us at Opportunity is to give the customer the opportunity to decide the product that best fits their needs.
And diving into some of those training, right, on first of all financial literacy, but also business skills. What are some of the kind of most effective practices that you've seen working with your network of financial inclusion officers to deliver content to refugee groups?
The biggest of them, Jack, is peer-to-peer training. Again, using persons that are part of the community, people you're used to, then becomes the best methodology that you can dispense the services that you want to give. Now, under financial literacy trainings, we want to change mindset. Now, with mindset change, that means you are including mentally the refugees, and then they go through a 6 weeks business skills training that helps the refugee on how to move business to the next level. So the first part is why we do the training, and the second part is how we do the training. The ultimate objective is then we include these well-trained members of the community into the financial system. So when it comes to measuring impact, we'll see how many of the refugees were trained, how many of them have been connected to the financial institution, how many of them have taken a product or multiple products. And that's how we measure our impact in the communities.
And in terms of numbers, Amos, where are you to this day in terms of the number of clients that you have both in settlements and in urban areas?
All right. Thank you. We have so far trained over 40,000 households in the refugee settlements. We have over 15,000 refugee account holders, and we've disbursed over 10,000 loans that amount to about $3 million US.
You know, Amos, when we look at the unique value propositions and some of the innovations that Opportunity Bank are developing for refugee populations, what are some of those innovations that you're most proud of, or that you're really interested to see develop over the coming years?
Thank you very much, Jack. Some of the innovations is how we blended the financial and non-financial services together to come up with a very unique value proposition for the refugees, putting including the refugees at product development, but also employing direct staff of the bank out of the refugee communities. Then we've given them a wide array of unique selling propositions. So the products that the refugees partake are very different from the ones that the normal national is going to take. Now, because we don't want to break down the market forces, we do not squarely separate the product offering. However, the uniqueness then includes them financially, but also because of the delivery channels that we've put at their disposal. So a refugee can access the bank through agents. We have a number of agents in the refugee settlements and in the host communities. We also have mobile, both USSD and the online banking that they can then use. And then those who would want to have an interpersonal face, they have the brick and mortar. And that's why we would want to open at least 5 branches to catalyze on the delivery channels.
For those that are listening, Amos, in the financial inclusion space in different countries and are listening to you here and are considering kind of developing new financial products and innovations for refugees, what would you tell them? What are some of the learnings that you've had about how to effectively do this?
Thank you very much, Jack. Step 1 is, in whatever we are going to do, we must put the refugees at the center of the thought process, design approach. If we're going to design any products, they must be at the center, and they will explain how, why, and where they want to be served. Then anyone who's going to come into access to finance, we need to break the cycles of over-dependency on aid, but also try to help them build resilience and livelihood, because we want to have sustainable communities. However, because we know there's a risk that is going to lie out there, it is very key to have credit enhancement programs. And that has been one of another unique item we've done. So we have a host of credit guarantees and the concessionary terms that we can lend to the refugees to allow those who have cash flows but are limited by traditional credit. And that is how we both can have that impact we want to see in the communities, but also help them to get out of poverty.
This was Series 1, Episode 3 of the Financial Inclusion Unlocked podcast. Subscribe and follow us to dive deeper into how we can unlock the true potential of financial inclusion by listening to the other discussions in our 10-episode series. Shout out to the Swiss Capacity Building Facility for supporting our first series. You can learn more about how they are innovating inclusive finance and how you or your organisation can support their work to fund more transformative projects by visiting www.scbf.ch.